This video is just for the group, the seducing of the church. This is how it operated in New Zealand, and I used to live in this town. I went to live there. Lived there for about 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, yep. So, yes. Before I got there, apparently, there was this woman who came up there. She was actually a qualified pastor, but she'd had an affair with a young boy in the church. She was an older woman, and she had this affair, I believe, with a young man in the church, seduced him, and had the affair, and she was put out. No one wanted to have anything to do with her. She was very much shunned upon. She moved to this area up north, and she had this friend with her, another woman. Yes. We believe, and I'm informed, that they had a lesbian relationship. The pastors were warned. Somebody warned them of this woman. But she set to and was laying hands on people, delivering people, and doing all that kind of work. Oh, it was awesome, the work that she did. She got hold of this relative of mine and she cast all the demons out, because my father was deep into witchcraft, and witchcraft was very deep into my mother's side too. That's why I had endured all the abuse and things that I'd gone through. So this woman had left and gone to Australia with her friend. So I had nowhere to live. I was going to move up there, and it was suggested I go and stay in her house. I arrived there one night and stayed in this relative's house, and that's another story. Someone came in the night dressed in a black robe and a mask and tried to touch my daughter. I know who the person was. I'm fully aware of who it was. And then the next day we moved into this woman's house. I'm sitting there in the evening. I put my daughter to bed, and the next minute I woke up and I'm staring straight face to face with a demon. It's standing there looking at me. It's visible, showing itself. What the heck? Later that night, my daughter was screaming, and she woke up and she was screaming. She said, "There's a man standing at the end of my bed. There's a man standing at the end of my bed." So I went around there and picked her up, and she ran with me and jumped into the bed that I was sleeping in. Went off to sleep, and she's shaking like a leaf and hanging on to me. And I woke up, and there was 3 demon powers standing at the foot of the bed, and there was one looking in the window. The one looking in the window had a marimoko on it, and whether you believe it or not, this is the truth. But we'll see, because you always know the fruit. You got to look for the fruit. So I rebuked these things, and they left the room, and I think it was about 2 days later, the Lord spoke to me, and he said, "Go and look." They all disappeared into this room. There was this room in the corner of the house, and I was told you could never, ever go in that room. It was a forbidden room to go into. And she wished she'd padlocked it. If she'd known that I was coming, she would have padlocked it so I couldn't go in. So, of course, I prayed. I opened up the door, and there were hundreds of manuscripts and writings. And I took a quick look at it, and the Lord said, "That's all on ancient powers, calling on demons, all this work." I thought, whoa, now I know where I've landed. And I was shocked. Before I left Auckland, I'd come from being in court over my daughter and all the false allegations and everything with all these witches. So now I'd gone from the frying pan into the fire. I moved out of there and moved into town. I didn't go anywhere near the churches. I tried to find another church, a Pentecostal church, that this relative of mine had nothing to do with, which I did. and along I went. However, that didn't work out. Everywhere I went, this relative would go and they would cry and bawl and tears would stream down their cheeks, and they would tell everybody how I'd murdered and raped and pillaged half New Zealand. I was a serial killer. I was wanted for murders. Oh, it was incredible, the stories that came out and the tears. That every party I went to, I had to have a whole box of tears, but the tears just flowed. They flowed down the relative's face. It was terrible. Anyway, at one stage they got together and there was about 60, 70, even up to 100, I was told, people gathered to launch a new church in this far out, distant part. Anyway, they were all gathered there and then they all got into praying. And they were prophesying over my life, prophesying that I would get caught out and filth and uncleanness and all these things. And they prophesied in the spirit realm. And they prophesied and they prophesied. And they saw demons over me and they saw all sorts of things over me. And this woman who had taken off and gone to Australia and was now practicing lesbian in Australia, she laid hands on them all and gave them all these giftings and all these callings to be prophets, to be intercessors, and prophesy over people and all these things. Anyway, apparently I didn't know. When I was 14, I remember being 14, I spent my 14th birthday in bed. I was an invalid. I wasn't allowed out of bed for 6 or 9 months or something. And when I did get up, I had to learn to walk again. But apparently this relative of mine said that apparently at 14 I was caught stalking local girls, apparently looking in their bedroom windows at night. See, Satan is the accuser of the brethren, and this is the working of the Jezebel spirit. The Jezebel spirit, as soon as it latches on and sees somebody that can discern it, they start then hit with all the false allegations and all the lies that come spewing out of Jezebel's mouth. And so I got news that something was up, and I left and went down to Auckland, to the big city, 3 hours away, whatever it was, 3-4 hours away. And I was seen leaving by the local police, the local Kai-Tai police. I was seen down in Auckland at 3:25 or something like that in the afternoon in Auckland. I was coming up near the central police station as these police left to go back home. And they waved to me. I stayed with friends and I was fast asleep in bed and on the Friday night, and apparently I stalked this woman. And she was terrified. I'd gone around and stalked her. So I was placed under excommunication because they'd prophesied that I would do these things. They'd prophesied. They saw in the spirit that I had committed all these murders and rapes and all sorts of things. They'd been told and they prophesied in the spirit. And the local priest went, "No, Mike is innocent. We know he is. We're 100% certain." But the church refused to accept. So in the end, they excommunicated me. To this day, I'm still under excommunication because I will not give in. In the meantime, you see, you got to test the spirits. You got to test the spirits to see whether they're of God. All things in the Old Testament under God's law, you have to establish everything before 2 or 3 witnesses. There were no witnesses that it was me that did the stalking. So this woman heard or something, or saw somebody near a window, tapping on the window or something, and it had to be me. It was obviously one of them that did it. And this man that had come into church, and he prophesied in the church. He prophesied. There was a man in the church, and he went on and on and on in the power of the Spirit. And it was all directed at me. Apparently I had done all these things, all sorts of terrible things. That man had been in jail for incest, sex with his own daughters. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I found out. I did the background. Someone found out for me and came and informed me. And so, in the end, yeah, they blamed me for it all. I was excommunicated. Eventually, I left the area and went. Then they followed me, and we were stalked one night when I was married, and and we were stalked. And several days later, about 10 days later, I found out that this relative and this other prophet had been down to a meeting on that weekend, just coincidentally, same weekend that we were stalked. Just coincidence. I met this woman, and she had been in that church. She was a beautiful worship leader, and I met her in that city, and she ran away. And I went round the corner. I saw her standing there in near the alleyway. So I sneaked round the back and come around and confronted her. And I said, "How are you?" And it turned out that they laid hands on her. And ever since they laid hands on her, she couldn't get enough sex. She'd go to nightclubs and she'd be letting men get in there all night long. She couldn't get enough of it. They weren't praying demons out of people. They were praying demons into people. That is the operation of the Jezebel spirit. The wreckage and the carnage from that original woman when she went there and she laid hands on all these prophets and all these intercessors. I mean, I'm in heaven. I've been told I'm not worthy. I won't even be there. But if I am there, I won't be worthy to undo their shoes. And they've all false prophesied. They laid hands on people. What else can I tell you? Oh, yeah, there was that one. There was another one where this couple, he left his wife and took off with another man's wife. And then she tried to, one of the spare wife, she tried to seduce me and I resisted it. The workings of just all these things went on in the church. Some of the most foul, disgusting filth you could ever come across. And it all went down in the church. They would take off, and I came up and I went once to a Promise Keepers, Christian men's organisation, a big Promise Keepers meeting, and I walked in there and sat down, and I looked and I thought, oh, it's safe enough here, I can sit here because I don't know anybody. And so I went in and I sat down there, and all of a sudden, as the meeting started, I realised that all this whole row of men behind me were all asked to leave. And they brought in all these prophets and intercessors, and they started praying over me, and I started to feel lust and all sorts coming at me because they were touching me. Yeah. See, Paul said, lay hands suddenly on no man, and it works both ways. Spirits are transferred through touch. That's why so many in the church love to get hold of the young ones and they pray over them, especially if they desire those young, juicy ones. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's why. Seducing the church through Jezebel. And so the church is now a monument. I think it's all closed now, someone said. It's gone. It's history. The workings of Jezebel, the filth that came out of it, because they allowed that one woman full of Jezebel, they got her in the church, and she laid hands on this relative of mine and all these other men. Oh, and the best one is one of the men from that group was a principal of a primary school. You call it, I suppose, an elementary school, primary school, whatever you call it. Anyway, he neglected or ignored the deputy principal's antics. And the deputy principal went to jail for raping and violating 147 boys. Yeah. Now that is the working of the Jezebel spirit in the church that came directly from that woman through that group. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 The police have established, some years ago now, that it wasn't me that did the murders. All these Christians here and all these religious people go on and on and on and on. I'm supposed to have committed all these murders. Those murders, I can tell you, were done by a whole group who are involved deep in a cult, in a black magic witchcraft cult. Yeah, and there were multiple DNAs found at the scene, and I'm not a suspect. But it is like folklore in the church here now that I did it. Yeah, yeah. What else? Yeah, that's about the big three. Oh, and my daughter, where she has been concerned, yes, they did an inquiry this year, and they found out that my daughter said that it wasn't me that did anything to her. I actually tried to save her as much as I could, but it was her mother and her mother's boyfriend, and they were all involved in a cult. And this cult has high-up people. It has people in government departments, social workers, and all these people, government child social workers, yeah. And probably, I think, police as well, are all involved in this cult with all the sexual abuse of children and murders. They are all in the poo house together. And they infiltrate the church because they know that the church is the one place that can stand up to it in the spirit and can pull down strongholds and take back the land. So obviously they go into the church and they seduce the church through the laying on of hands and all these things. And the church gets seduced, so the church is ineffective. And when the church is ineffective, they flourish in a society. So yeah, praise God, praise God, praise God.